but you're measuring what?
Well, we'll take climate models and we'll run through climate scenarios versus risk assessment approach to vulnerability, and we'll scale the risk by probability.
Okay, and you're looking at the climate impacts on those things that you're just talking about. Yeah. So you might want to start. So there's a risk of getting too big, and then you're not really able to measure anything because you're so big. So one way you can. So it's really your strategic planning of what you think you can cover. So by the sounds of it, you really need to get your goal and be clear that actually it's not yet quite clear what your goal is. So the other thing about this talk is sometimes I talk about uncertainty. Joe and I were very uncertain about actually what we wanted to do, but we organically grew it. Now that's a very scary thing to do, particularly you researchers sitting around there, because you know we get our goal and we've got our measurable objectives and we know exactly what we're going to do. We didn't manage this project like that at all. And you know, it was and one of the things that gave me, Penny Hoare's been a very strong influence on us to say, actually that's okay, because the more we got to know, the more we kind of did a scope. So one thing you might think about doing is, actually, I'm just not going to get worried that I haven't yet realised what my particular goal is. Think about it, actually I'm going to do a scoping first. So you could argue that perhaps for the first 6 months we were just scoping and getting a feeling for what we actually thought was the most important thing that we need to focus on. So because you might get fearful that, I have to make this decision now, and if I get it wrong, then I've kind of got it wrong. Well, I would encourage you to think through, actually maybe this is a journey, and I don't necessarily need to, at what point do I need to make a decision about that and find out more information? It sounds to me like you need more information. Keep talking to more people about it. Is that a good answer? And also other stakeholders, there might be other people who, if you think it's getting too broad, there might be other people that can do pieces of it for you. Because it sounds like you're tackling a large...
Well, we have lots of people.
You have lots of people.
Yeah.
The other thing is to also minimise risk by doing a bit of it first, so that you do a piece of that puzzle first and learn from that experience. Yeah? So that you don't kind of try and do, actually we're going to do this. We've got 6 aspects to this project and we're going to start them all off at once. One other way, I'm sure I'm not telling you anything new, you know all of this, but you can actually sometimes think, well, why don't we just, for the next 3 months, let's scope out one piece of it, and that will inform how we do those other things. But I agree with you. I think the more narrow you are, you can easily miss the whole point to it, can't you? You can miss the thing that's going to make this important, if you like, to whether it's Halifax or to Nova Scotia, the learnings from it, probably come from slightly bigger extensions, because at the zero, it's like the eagle. The eagle's too focused on that mouse. He might miss the fact that, look, there's a fox just about to come and get that mouse. So the analogy is you need to know a little bit of the context of what is around that detail.
I'm moving again away from the last question. Regarding your interesting study, I understand that people were approached in a really friendly way and maybe untypical way.
Yeah.
And I'm interested in this interface between the information that is collected in a objective way and human perception, because temperature was recorded, for example, both in their homes and outside, and then you draw graphs. And I was wondering, did the people get to see those graphs, or did you represent them in a more friendly way? And what was the impact of that information on?
Thank you for that question.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So, and I'll also mention. So this is one of those stories that I was saying to Judy. She said, "You ready to talk about it?" I said, "Yes." This is the 14th time I've spoken about it, and each time it takes a different pathway. So there's incredible richness in the way we could tell this story. What we did with the eye buttons was that we nothing like, and I'd encourage you Nova Scotians to see your relatively less resources maybe when you look over the water to the other parts of Canada. It's actually a great asset. So we don't have many resources, and I think we use that as an asset. With this eye button, Jo, what she did was we had 6 of them, and we gave one eye button to 6 people. Now we talked to each other and we go, well, what do we do next? Does Joe physically go in? We were going to get Joe to physically go in and pick those 6 up, and then she would deliver them to another 6 people. But we didn't, really, that was going to be so, every day she'd be driving to this town and doing that. So we decided, really, because we had no resources, well, why don't we ask those 6 people to pass the baton on to another 6 people, yeah? Well, that's just useful resources. Now, Penny Hoare says to us, sensational. You've now built, part of your research, and this is what we're mapping, we're building where the eye buttons are going. We're actually measuring the connection between people based on where the eye button's going. So we, of course, Penny, we planned that. That's exactly why we're doing it. So we've got those 6 eye buttons have then gone, of course, to about 6 people. Yeah, so we've got about 36 links. And now what we're doing is measuring of those, so we've got unique identifiers for all the households. We know who's come to different events, etc. So we're mapping all the connections between people. So what we then did, so if you think about it, the other lovely thing about that method was that these eye buttons were our little project. They were like a little pass the parcel, we call them. So I give mine to, you know, I don't know, I've got it from Joe and I've measured it, and I give it to Judy. I say, Judy, Joe's really nice and she's doing this project. Can you just have this eye button in your house? And it's going to measure your temperature, yeah. So I'm actually becoming, I'm passing the parcel, but I'm a passer of the story, aren't I? So then Judy passes it on to the next person and tells the story. So that's a lovely way also for us to be getting, so why are we measuring the temperature? Oh, because she's suggesting that we should be just checking whether our houses are getting too hot during summer. You know, like, it's just basic things, isn't it? So it's not climate change. All right, so that's how that happened, which is nice. Then everyone was invited to a workshop. So we are now over 12 months into this project, and we have not had one community event. Now that's, you know, that's extraordinary, isn't it, for a lot of projects with communities. You have a workshop to launch this thing. 12 months in, we had a workshop, and of course we knew we were going to have at least 36 people there, because they were all coming with Hines, our environmental engineer. He had interestingly, we chose not to have, we had their graphs, but they were de-identified. So they got a sealed envelope with their house and their graph, and then Hines took them through, if you like, the science. And I'll tell you what, it was technical, and they were lapping it up. Tell us more, tell us more. So he would show them the graphs and tell them generically what was going on, and he would show them different graphs and what that meant for different houses, and then he talked about what they can do about it, and they just wanted to know, what does that mean? I've heard about this water pump that runs from solar. Can we use that? And then he got his little meter and would plug it into different appliances in the hall, you know, into the kettle, and he'd be reading out the energy efficiency. So his big thing was, if you've got a crappy old fridge, you are using an enormous amount of energy. So then he'd just equate that to cost. So it became energy efficiency, cost, how they could save money. And then, right at the end of the night, we were talking, just naturally, we got talking about global warming. And they were asking about climate change. So I said to my husband, oh, I'll be home about 8 o'clock. You know, start at 6, I'll be home at 8. Well, couldn't get out of there. It was 10:30, 11, and they were still peppering him. So that's the lovely thing about going slowly. If we had called a workshop on climate change in that town, forget it. Yeah. Then they all opened their envelopes up to look at their houses, and of course they weren't precious about it. They were showing everybody, look, mine's the best, and they'd showing it all around, and they stayed on, and so we're keen to, we'll go back and redo their buttons. That's probably what you also had in mind. We'll do a pre and a post. So we wanted to create the change in the houses and then go back and do another. The buttons will go out again so that we can show them the change in their household temperature.